What's up, friends, and welcome into Fantasy Pros, the fantasy football podcast. I am Chris Welsh, and today we are discussing running back busts. What is an RB bust? What is not an RB bust? Kind of at this point, I think what a lot of people are going to go with their draft strategy. But we're not going to just talk about like the theory. We're going to talk about running backs that are busts, and you got to avoid them. I might disagree with a few of them. Joining me today, we've got Terrell Furman from Betting Pros and Fantasy Pros, my man right here, and Theo Gremminger from Fantasy Points, one of my favorite sites in the entire landscape. First time I got to do a show with you, Theo. So how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I enjoyed talking to you guys in the pre-show. First time we're chopping it up. And big shout out to all the good work you guys do over here at Fantasy Pros as well.
Hard working. We're all doing. Me and my guy Terrell, we got to hang in Vegas for our big trip. But Terrell, you live in our Betting Pros world. But as you've told a lot of us, when you get to kind of sneak into here and get into the fantasy side, I know you're ready to chop it up, my friend.
Oh, always. And I love talking down on players that I could never compete with. So I just can't wait to be able to talk down on some running backs here, especially one in particular.
Yeah, I wonder where we're gonna get to. I'm gonna get attacked. I already feel attacked. I'm on the defensive. I'm gonna just let you guys know.
We didn't even say anything. That's the crazy thing. I'm not even looking your way. So like you're projecting. You're projecting. That's what it is.
And that's definitely my personality. I'm gonna be on the defensive in this episode. This is a very negative episode, but we're gonna turn those negatives into positives because we are gonna make you guys better drafters. We are going to improve your fantasy season. We can also do that, reminder, with the Fantasy Pros draft kit at fantasypros.com/kit, where we got ranks, advice, sleepers, articles, more, and the busts to avoid. So go and check it out today. Some free stuff on there and on the premium. So go to Fantasy Pros draft kit today, fantasypros.com/kit. All right, let's kick this bad boy off with a little bit of theory. What makes a bust? What is a bust in general? So, Theo, we're going to start with you here. To me, this sometimes kind of flows like a sleeper where we're like, hey, what's a sleeper? You know, like sleepers can have different definitions. A bust, I think, is usually going to be tied to value, but there's going to be some instances here where we're not going to do that. So in your mind, we don't even have to think about like the running back specifically, but if you want to tie that specific position into this, what makes a player a bust in your mind?
Yeah, so a bust, I think that's a great analogy you put out there with sleeper, where there's not like an official definition of it. But to me, a bust in fantasy football is a player that fails to deliver at ADP. And it's a little more nuanced than that. A lot of it can be opportunity cost, where if you draft a guy and he plays okay, but you happen to draft him instead of a player next to him who becomes sort of a league-winning value, that can also be a bust. I think some people might look at a player as hey, it's easy. It's a bust. A bust would have been like Tyreek Hill last year, using a top 3 pick on him, averages 12 points a game. That's the bust. But if you look a couple picks down, Breece Hall averaged 15 points per game, but he was going one spot ahead of Bijan Robinson for a lot of the summer, and he was going about 6 spots ahead of Saquon Barkley. Both picks were massively better. Therefore, Breece Hall, despite 15 points per game, big bust. So I think it's sort of a sliding scale, guys. When you get to the first round, it's much easier to be a bust. And as you go down a little bit more, you give a little bit more wiggle room.
I think actually something you said there is really interesting, because how I'll look at players a lot of the times is I'm going to have a window. So it's like, okay, this guy is RB8. Are they a bust if they finish at RB12? In my mind, I'm going to be like, no, because they're in the window. You want them to produce within, I would say, a certain percentile of, obviously they are going to be a big boost if they overperform, but as long as a guy is in that specific window. But you brought up something I think that makes the idea of a bust kind of interesting in my mind, that a player can almost become a bust because of the guy you skipped for that guy. And that opens it. I would still say, like, personally, I'm not sure if, like in your example, if I were to take, or maybe I'm going to script the example, but like if I'm going to take Breece and then 2 guys that I could have drafted perform better, but Breece still performs within the window of what I need, I'm not sure I'm going to look at it as a bust. I'm going to probably look at myself as like, I screwed up, instead of him being a bust. But as long as they are scoring, so that would be for me. Players need to score in, I think, a positional window, and I think the window gets bigger as you go down. So as you said, like, RB1s, first round, second round guys, I think they need to score within, roughly RB1 territory, call it 4 or 5 positions. So if a guy's RB2, I want them to score like in the RB6, RB7 range. When you get into the RB2-ish range of like 13 through 24, I want them to score in that window. And then it just kind of keeps expanding. That's a certain way that I attack it outside of a guy completely being awful or something like that. But Terrell, what do you think about this? We've got Theo's analysis on it. I'm kind of throwing in a little bit, just conjecture into it. Is there anything you want to add as a different version of what makes a player a bust to you, or add on to the conversation of what we have?
Yeah, I like the tier-based thinking of it of, hey, I drafted you as your RB1, you finish as an RB2, you're a bust. Like, I needed an RB1 and I got an RB2. That's not good. And then it goes a little bit deeper than that for me. Injuries do play a part in you being a bust, especially if we know for a fact the injury is coming. And I mean, all right, I'm sorry. I guess I am the first one to throw the shades your way. But CMC was RB1 last year, and we all knew that there was an injury concern. We all knew that. And there were still a lot of people that said, you know what? I don't care. CMC, RB1. Well, you really, really, really took an L on that. And you got to feel like, oh, well, that was a bust pick. Is CMC the bust, or is the pick the bust? So sometimes it's not necessarily the player and it's more of the pick. You took him 1 overall when you probably should have pushed him down or further down in the rankings because of the injury concerns. And that happens with guys all the time. So sometimes it's not all about the player being a bust, and more of that pick is a bust.
And the higher you go up, the more bustability, right, Theo? I think that's like something you mentioned. Like the higher we are, the players, the players' bustability is just a lot bigger.
Yeah, it's just sort of you can kind of gauge it by the pressure you need to hit on the following round. So, your definition of a guy's like you draft him RB8 and he finishes RB11, technically that's not like the worst thing ever, because structurally you're still getting that RB1, but now you've got to hit. Now that second round pick, that third round pick, a couple of those guys, if not both of them, need to play better than their ADP. So a lot of nuance with this one. It's easy to pick out like the easy busts. I think, it gets a little bit harder when saying, did this guy provide fantasy managers win rates to kind of push them through, help them win titles?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like at the end of the day, like we can play all of this theory and stuff like that, but we all know that like if a player is just a big fat failure, big fat phony, then they're just a bust. Like there are some instances where we can instantly, like CMC last season, like that's the bust of all busts because it was 1 overall. He was injured. He didn't perform. So sometimes it's in our face, but there is some nuance to it. We will attempt to weave some nuance and then just some in-your-face RB busts here, because I would also say this wasn't necessarily part of what we're going to talk about, but we'd probably all agree that the bust rate on RBs is dramatically higher than any other position. And that's why we have this episode. And that's actually why I would argue, not just because we're on it, but this is the most important episode of understanding and picking out who the busts are to avoid, because the miss rate is so much bigger here than any other position. So we are going to be digging in to some big names. But first, let's talk about our draft assistant. All these names that we're going to be talking about, you can use a draft assistant and you can start playing around on how to avoid them and what drafts look like to avoid them. When you're drafting, these decisions, they all come fast. So Draft Assistant connects directly to your draft and provides both real-time pick suggestions and estimations on which players might be taken before your next pick. You can even use that to say, oh, that guy over there is going to take this bust and this is going to work out for me. Draft Assistant fully integrates your customized cheat sheets and suggests picks based on your rankings, team build, ADP, and other factors. Or you can create those custom cheat sheets where you could use Terrell, you could use myself, Theo, you can just get a bunch of people in there and you can create your own custom cheat sheet in it. Dominate your draft in real time without the guesswork with Draft Assistant at fantasypros.com/assistant or on the Fantasy Football Draft Wizard app. Try it for free during your draft by claiming your 3-day free trial of Fantasy Pros Premium at fantasypros.com/premium. And we're not even against this little cheat code. You could save that up into your big draft. You could use that, try it all out, but you're probably going to want to stick around. So fantasypros.com/premium. Alrighty, we have got running backs to bust. We are officially into some names. And we're going to hurt some feelings. And Theo's going to come right out the gate and hurt some feelings. At least just mine. So Theo, your number one It doesn't necessarily have to, I mean, it could be, one of your top, but this is the first name that you picked here. You guys are both going to be sticking in the first round. 2 running backs we're about to bust in the first round. So Theo, why don't you hit it with RB number 1 that you got to avoid?
Yeah, so for me, it's an at-cost argument, and it's Christian McCaffrey. Earlier in the summer, I was mixing in CMC when he was going inside of the second round. I even took him at the 201 in a big high-stakes draft about a month ago. But now you're starting to see him creep up into a range where I just can't pull the trigger. 29-year-old running back coming off of a very injury-plagued season. And now with McCaffrey, I think he could rise even higher due to the injuries with Isaac Orendo and Jordan James behind him, and just the lack of a narrative that there could be a second 49ers running back sort of mixing in. I get it. CMC's won you multiple fantasy leagues. When CMC is hitting, he's a guy who can give you 25 points per game. It's really a opportunity cost argument here. I just can't take Christian McCaffrey over a player like Malik Neighbors. I just can't take Christian McCaffrey over a few other of those wide receivers in those range, starting to see the Puka Nakuas, the Nico Collins, the Brian Thomas Jr.'s. Not to mention, there's other very appealing running backs around him that are younger, such as Ashton Genty, Devon Achane, who are going behind him in every draft. So for me, at cost, I'm fading CMC right now.
Now, in half-point PPR and Fantasy Pros, ECR is a little bit better than the 7. It's at 11. He is positionally RB4. But I'll tell you this. Stupid 49er homer aside, which I am, everyone will let me know, I'm uncomfortable with it because I think, when Christian McCaffrey is healthy and out there, he is the best, if not one of the best out there. And that I think is always a really difficult thing in fantasy. I deal with it in the fantasy baseball side. When you got a guy that has diminishing skill sets with injuries, that's easy. But when you have a guy that has an extremely high-end skill set, but the injury is floating around, that's where the nuance is kind of difficult. And he is an extremely talented player that is going to get all the run. But a month or 2 ago, we were getting Christian McCaffrey in the second round. He was an easy wheel pick. It wasn't even a question. But there are a lot of instances where he is rising up. And there is a major injury workload question that's floating out there. It's just which one is going to come to head? Are the injuries going to fully take over? Or is the skill set going to be incredible? Or the third dynamic, could the skill set start to diminish? Those are big questions. Terrell, what do you think about this as a little aside? I think I know where we're going to go with this, but are you a big fader? Do you think Christian McCaffrey is going to be a bust this season? Yeah, no, I was about to ask another question. Let's start there and then I'll jump to the other one.
Yeah, I'm not big into Christian McCaffrey here. Like Theo said, there's a lot of players going around that range that I just feel a lot more comfortable with. And it's just more of my drafting style. Like, I tend, especially in these 3 wide receiver leagues, to like to go wide receiver early, especially in the back end of the rounds. I like to go 1 for 1. So if I'm going 1 for 1 and Christian McCaffrey is my 1 and he's not there, it really, really hurts, man. And I don't know if I'm willing to ride that train the whole rest of the season. I've been there, done it before, had a good time. I've made a lot of money with Christian McCaffrey, and you know what? I'll stick to it in DFS. I will stick with it in DFS when I know for a fact he's playing. But redraft before the season, I'm really good on it.
Like asking questions upon questions. Christian McCaffrey is making me a worse host here. So let me ask you both this question then. If Christian McCaffrey, Terrell, plays 17 games this year, I'll give you 16 if you want. Is he a bust?
No, he's RB1.
Theo, if he plays 16 games this year, is Christian McCaffrey a bust?
No, I think he would deliver right where he's going for sure. I don't know if he's necessarily RB1, though. I'd push back on that a little bit just because the competition at the top, the 2 23-year-olds, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, I think that would be a real competition, but he would certainly have a chance at it, Terrell, for sure.
So that's where I think this gets really interesting, where it's like this is a clear bust because of an injury history and probably a workload management that is not necessarily equated to every other single player. Ironically, I don't think this is going to apply to the next player who's very popular here. And I don't even know if it's necessarily the bust territory, but boy, a lot of my coworkers sure don't like this player. So Terrell, you're going to jump in with your first running back to avoid. It is another first rounder. I wonder who it could be.
I mean, come on, man. It's the low-hanging fruit. Saquon Barkley's right there. We know what Saquon Barkley has been in his career. If you're not, I'm a Giants fan. Trust me, I know. You have those great moments, those great seasons, and you're just like, oh, Saquon Barkley, he's great. You go buy the jerseys, you celebrate. Shoot, the Eagles even won a Super Bowl. I don't know what that's like with Saquon Barkley. They won a Super Bowl with him. It's great. It's peaches and sunshines. And then you get a random carry up the middle where he twists and roll his ankle and it's destroyed, shattered. He's done. And now you're trying to figure out, man, is he going to come back and be healthy? Wait, maybe we can get him for playoffs. Are we even going to make the playoffs now? I mean, the Saquon Barkley experience is an incredible experience for a lot of people that haven't been in. And I recommend that you do get in, just not this year, because he was the RB1. He had 400 plus carries, 435 to be exact. That's not even adding all of the touches he had. He had so much usage last year, and we've just seen that year after year after year with all these running backs. Derrick Henry in 2020. You have Joe Mixon, who's had 400 plus touches in a season, and he didn't bounce back after that. Like, you've had all these different running backs. Christian McCaffrey, we talked about heavy workload. They're talking about the curse of 370 and a 370 carries in a season, the touches in a season, that how much of that, and people are like, oh, well, you can't predict injury. Well, I'm just saying, if you're a running back and you carry the ball a bunch, you get hit a bunch, you have a lot of tread on the tire, you're not going to be as productive. And so with Saquon Barkley, a player that does have injury issues that nobody's talking about because he had one good, fully healthy season with the Eagles, no, I'm not sold. I'm really not. We've seen too many times the RB1 of the year prior not being the RB1 again the next year. And so I don't want to play that game with Saquon Barkley. He's going way too high, way too high.
If you want to know what it's like to work at Fantasy Pros, I got a birthday card earlier this year. It was from Andrew Erickson. He was like, hey, happy birthday. Reminder, Saquon Barkley had 400 carries. Don't draft him. In the morning motivations we have on our Slack at Fantasy Pros, Joe Pisapia, rise and grind, everybody. Remember, Saquon Barkley had 400 carries. Don't draft him. It's crazy. I do not subscribe to the level that any of these guys do. I get it, and there's statistical data of other players. Those players are not Saquon Barkley, but there's data of these players with 400 plus touches don't produce. It's a high cost. ECR 6 overall. He's RB3. He's my RB3. I don't have him at 1 or 2, and the production would state that he should be number 1. I've bumped him down a little bit. But Theo, what say you? It's a big narrative here. Are you going to subscribe to the same thing that Saquon Barkley as the RB3 or middle of the first round is a bust?
Yeah, so history has definitely not been kind to the running backs who absorb this much volume in a season. Saquon had the most running back touches, I think, in 26 years since Terrell Davis. And the last 2 running backs who had comparable volume were Arian Foster and Larry Johnson, and both of them had serious regression the following season and then actually bounced back the season after. So neither player was cooked. It was just a regression, and then they bounced back. So it was like the volume took a toll on them. But I will say with Barkley, we do have the threat of Jalen Hurts as a runner. That's something a lot of these historical comps don't have in common. You also, with Philadelphia, have arguably the league's best offensive line, and the offensive ecosystem there is excellent. And I'd say that there's a little bit of an unknown upside where a lot of those 1-yard touchdowns went to Jalen Hurts, and it's certainly been something he's done every year. If Saquon could absorb maybe 4 of those from Jalen Hurts, then you're talking about another out for him. So I, like you, have him at RB3, not a full fade. I would have thought it would have been a full fade, but like you get in these drafts now and Saquon's falling to 6, 7, and with some of the CMC late summer steam, you might see Saquon falling to 8, especially with Lamb, a couple of these guys moving up. So I'd say I'm neutral on Saquon Barkley, not a fade, but not a guy I'm reaching for.
Yeah, and draft theory too. Just to throw out, like I'll just tell you, I love the depth at wide receiver. Not to say that I want to fall behind in drafts. Like I don't like if I let everybody else get Drake London and Brian Thomas, and then I'm just like, okay, hey, here's my first Zay Flowers. Like I'm behind the 8 ball for sure. But I just love the depth versus what I like at running back. That's chalk. Because I think there's some great dart throws. There's some and better than even dart throws as well when you get into the 20s and 30s. But I don't like it like I like the wide receivers. So not saying I have to, but if Saquon's falling in drafts, and in 6 is kind of that, I do think there's a tough decision of like Saquon versus a Malik Neighbors. I'm like, ooh, that one definitely does make it a tough spot there. But I'm very comfortable drafting him. Terrell, you had something to add?
Yeah, so I'm very, very most important fantasy league I'm in. I still haven't won, and it is the bane of my existence to this day. I have pick number 3. Saquon didn't even cross my mind at 3. It has not crossed my mind to take him at 3. Saquon's going at 3 in a lot of drafts. Like if you look at what we have on Fantasy Pros at ADP, Saquon's ADP across all networks, it comes out to about 3rd. I can't imagine taking Saquon above Jahmyr Gibbs, above Justin Jefferson. Even, I mean, let's play a little bit of a name game. Like Gibbs, Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. We'll stop it there. Those are 3 guys that are legit going after Saquon in a lot of drafts. And I don't know if I'm willing to take the chance on what I know to be a very, very strong trend of players that get that amount of touches, whether it's an injury or whether it's just a drop in production, not being the same.
By the way, looking here, we have a couple sources. We have like Yahoo Sleeper, RTS Sports. You can check out on Fantasy Pros. You go to ADP. Saquon's actually 2. He on average, it's an aggregate of those. He is the 2.7 tied with Bijan Robinson. Yeah, I would say that's a no, but it's still not in like the world where I'm absolutely terrified. We've got Saquon's teammate, and we got some autograph stuff for you to potentially take home. So it's on Saquon, but it is AJ Brown. So this month we want to give you a chance to win a signed A.J. Brown Eagles Salute to Service helmet for free, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com. All you've got to do is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on any video, maybe this one specifically. You guys can tell us who your biggest RB bust is this season. And that's it. You're entered. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so you can turn on some notifications. So A, you can know when we've got new videos up, and B, because you might be the winner and you want to be notified of your prize. Again, AJ Brown Eagles Salute to Service helmet autographed, courtesy of pristineauction.com. That can be yours. RB2s, not technically like RB2s, but the second running backs that these fine gentlemen say you have got to avoid because they are busts. And Theo, you are up. Who is your second running back?
Yeah, so especially based on the ADP that you guys are citing, it's James Cook for me. James Cook, I feel like we're paying a lot for last year's stats. He's going at 45 overall at some sites. Your guys' expert consensus overall is 38 and running back 14. And it seems like it would be sort of an easy click where a player that was this successful last year, let's just take him in this range. I just think there's some other running back options around him with a lot more upside. The thing that I worry about for James Cook is not only is the fact that he's not practicing, it's this sort of hold-in information. Josh Allen saying all the right things. All his teammates are supporting him, looking to get a contract. But that hasn't matriculated. I also think that there's the threat of a little bit more Ray Davis being mixed in. And Ty Johnson is sort of his own thing in Buffalo. They love him in that pass-catching role. And last year, James Cook scored 18 touchdowns, and that was an incredible driver for his fantasy scoring numbers. He was a player that I had exposure to him the year before as well. This year, I think kind of the well runs dry. Only played 48% of snaps last year, which is just nuts for a player that was this productive. But it's a touchdown regression candidate who's not currently on the field practicing. I'm going to fade him this year at his ADP.
I really feel uncomfortable with a lot of these sit-in, hold-out type of situations as well. Building, there is a touchdown regression. And Terrell, how about this? We talked about the ECR. ADP, James Cook's aggregate ADP is 32. So it's even higher, way higher. I mean, we're talking a round higher than, or at least a half a round based on ECR, a full round higher than what Theo was talking about. So what do you think? Do you think James Cook is a bust to avoid this year?
Yes, and it's really not for the reasons that Theo eloquently put right there, but more of my own draft history. Because what happens when they finally get these holdouts and they pay them, and these guys are so happy, they got their money, they're excited, they come back to tramp, just like that hamstring injury, calf injury, something that's nagging for the rest of the season. And then you see that drop in production, and you're like, wait, what? You were so good when you were trying to get the money, and now you got the bag, and I can't play you anymore? Like, that's how it feels. And it seems like James Cook is kind of going down that same path. And then you talk about the emergence of Ray Davis and all of that. And is he going to steal into that workload? Is this going to become more of a timeshare, especially in the early part of the season, because Cook is missing all this time? You're missing this time. Guess who's somebody's getting the work in practice, and that means somebody is looking good. And if somebody's looking good, they may get some more burn in the beginning of the season. And if Ray Davis takes off, how do you just go back to making this a full James Cook type of thing? So I think there's a lot more room for a split backfield here, and that just makes James Cook a little bit more, what would I say, bustable.
Crazy number 4. That's the amount of games that James Cook did not score a touchdown last year. That's a wild amount of games where he was in. So you maybe have to play a little bit of the like touchdown positive or there's not going to be positive regression, but you have to look at the regression number, and if there is a higher workload and guys like Josh Allen in there, the 30s does make that a high cost. So that is the pick here for Theo. James Cook, the RB bust to avoid. Terrell, you're up. What do you think? RB2, you're a little bit deeper on this, and I'm full with you on this. I actually did draft him once because I was forced to because of how crazy backs went, but I am a full fade on your running back as well. So let's hear the RB to avoid for you, part 2.
Yeah, it's Tony Pollard. And it's really nothing against Tony Pollard, to be honest. Like, it's really not. But Tony Pollard, I think, had the best season that he could probably have had in Tennessee with what he was given, and the fact that he finishes the RB21. He had a 1,000-yard rushing season. He got 260 carries. And ultimately, what we were going into the season saying the same thing as this. Hey, is it going to be a split between Pollard and Spears? It wasn't. It was all Pollard. But, oh, man, I'm telling you, I don't know if you guys have been reading into the Titans training camp and everybody's talking about Cam Ward. Tajay Spears is the second name that pops the most in Titans camp right now. They are all talking about Tajay Spears and the upgraded role he's going to have in this offense, and this is going to be a little bit more of a split. And also, if I add all of that I said about Tony Pollard dominated. I mean, he had 13-3 in terms of games that he was the lead back, quote-unquote lead back, and yet he still has less top 12 fantasy weeks than Tajay Spears. So if you're telling me Tajay Spears is going to get an increased workload, teams are now game planning for Tony Pollard, and then they're going to get the change of pace in Tajay Spears, and he goes out there and he has those big games, something similar to Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott, then I think that this is going to be a little bit more of Tajay Spears' backfield here. So I think that this is a bust in terms of where Tony Pollard is going and where Tajay Spears is going. And I think that they're both probably putting up similar production, if not Spears edging him out. I just think it's way too high of a cost for Tony Pollard, and he doesn't pay this back.
The minute the team too talked about like, that they want to like decrease the workload, that's like the first sign of like, oh, here we go, like older back, we're getting going in here. Also, you talk about, I guess everyone's drafting habits clearly get different, but that's like a clear range when you get into that low mid 20s where you're just littered with all of these like in really exciting rookie running backs and there's more upside. I don't think Pollard has enough of the floor, and he's going one spot higher than like Caleb Johnson on ADP. Tony Pollard 69 on the ADP. Caleb Johnson is 70 all day, every day. Also, just looking at some of the other names at other positions, Travis Hunter, Ridley, Waddle, they're all going lower. Those are just like, no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. We keep going in here. I am worried about that workload ticking down a little bit. Theo, do you want to pour some cold water on our fear, or are you going to stoke the fire?
No, I'm with you. I prefer Tajay Spears at cost to Tony Pollard. I think they wanted it to be a committee backfield last year, but Tajay had to deal with so many injuries. Tajay, when he came back fully healthy to end last season, had 3 straight RB1 weeks in PPR. And Tajay had 52 receptions as a rookie, also ran the ball very well as sort of the Derrick Henry backup. So I would also bet on Tajay Spears taking a big leap forward in year 3. And just because of the lack of established pass catchers, I think even if Pollard is giving you like some predictable volume week to week, there's still a chance that Tajay Spears is still going to be the more valuable pick because they're going to have to utilize him in the passing game to really help Cam Ward out a lot. So Spears has multiple outs, and if Pollard misses time, it's wheels up. Spears is a good enough pass catcher. I mean, he'd be a low-end RB1 type based on the pass catching ability. So yeah, I'm with you guys. Tajay Spears is the preferable pick at cost.
The tough thing too is you can look at Pollard and you can be like, well, guys, you had 5 touchdowns, nothing receiving. Like there could be positive regression, but it's like Cam Ward is in there now. Tajay Spears gets more usage, over 300 touches for Pollard. If they go down to 250, it just seems like there's like check mark after check mark, Theo, that like I don't see a lot of positive regression in the future for an RB that finished in half PPR 21 last season.
It feels like it's the new dead zone in that area where we talked about the dead zone for many years, and you start getting into that range where it's the Mixons, the Pollards, the Aaron Jones because of his age, a few other guys there, Brian Robinson. And it's like you said, there's better ways for you to sort of to use your running back draft picks, go a little bit higher or go a little bit lower, where there's some guys with sort of similar outcomes. What's the Jordan Mason versus Tyjae Spears? I know where Andrew Erickson will be on that one, but I'm sort of with him on that one. You can wait a little bit and get maybe a higher upside outcome.
I wish we do breakout running backs. We'd be talking about Jordan Mason on this, but he ain't making this episode unless he gets that nice little cameo. We're going to go to the third running backs that these guys say are busts. But first, it's time for you to get in the game. Best Ball is live at DraftKings. $15 million is on the line with real stakes and real excitement. Best Ball is the biggest fantasy contest at DraftKings. We're talking a $15 million guaranteed prize pool with 2 millionaires being crowned for first and second place. Play season-long fantasy football with DraftKings, the DraftKings way. With Best Ball, there's no waiver wires and no roster management. You get bigger rosters, so injuries won't end your season. Just draft your team and you're set. If a shot at winning a share of $15 million isn't enough to get you excited, check this out. DraftKings is offering everyone a draft one, get one special. Your $20 entry fee scores you a bonus ticket. So download the DraftKings app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for all customers who enter the NFL Best Ball 15 million millionaire contest to get a bonus ticket and get a shot at being crowned one of 2 millionaires only on DraftKings. All right, gentlemen, not your final, but the final of this little crew here, because we are going to, at the end of the show, tell you the zero exposure running backs that both of these guys are saying. So, there's nuance to busts. It's like, I don't like the value. If a guy falls, you could maybe see yourself. No, this is zero exposure from these guys. We're going to get there. This isn't quite there, but Theo, we're going to jump to you. RB3 in the RBs that you got to avoid that are busts, and who do you got?
Yeah, and we talked about this range of running backs in drafts. And for me this year, David Montgomery's a fade. And it's a tough one for people to hear because Montgomery's been a massive ADP hit for consecutive seasons in Detroit. Really has been a huge driver of rushing touchdowns on this team. He has 25 touchdowns the last 2 years in only 28 regular season games. Incredible production. He's been a top 16 scorer in PPR in points per game for consecutive years. But this is a classic example of paying for last year's stats and last year's situation. It's Jahmyr Gibbs season. And when it comes to David Montgomery, with all those stats where he was incredibly productive, that was him playing about 50% of snaps. I think this is the year that we finally see Jahmyr Gibbs taking over a 60% plus, maybe a 65% plus snap share at the running back position. Gibbs has RB1 overall potential and incredible talent. And I think that's going to be the wrinkle with John Morton is way more Jahmyr Gibbs, a little bit less of this complete split backfield. So for me, David Montgomery, I would bet on him regressing in the touchdown department, regressing in the snaps department, and it's going to be hard for him to return value even at RB24. He's really a kind of a purgatory pick or best at that sort of range for me.
This one's like the crowd pleaser because it's like any of us that are Jahmyr Gibbs stands, like we're just like, get out of here. Like this is why Jahmyr Gibbs could be like RB1 if David Montgomery didn't exist. But like when he's there, there's going to be some equity taken away. But, taking the guy that's behind the guy as an RB2 does feel a little Terrell, is David Montgomery an avoid or is he a true bust?
I think it's more of an avoid. I think it's more of an avoid because there's a lot of things that I think has to go wrong for him to be a bust. And yes, the production, yes, the workload or injury. We've seen that with him in the past. Like the touchdowns coming down and regression there. Like I could see a bunch of that playing into it, but ultimately I still think he's like a really solid player. It just seems like in that range of the draft, there's other players, there's wide receivers, there's everybody else that I'm just way more interested in than David Montgomery at this point in time. So it's like, I don't think that I'm avoiding him because he's a bust, but it's just more of, I'm way more interested in everything else going on around him.
And this one kind of also smells of the players you would take Montgomery for to pass up. And you would look back and you'd be like, oh, like if you were to pass up, like Travion Henderson for him, or I think Caleb Johnson. ECR for David Montgomery is 53 overall. Positionally, he is RB24, and that kind of lines up with the aggregate ADP, which has him at 52, except the ADP has him as the 20th running back being taken, which is like woof. And again, that is using a few of the aggregate sites that we have out there, and it just creates the whole. So not every site is the same on it, but that is a pretty high cost for it is traditionally a team that wants to use both of those backs, but it's a pretty heavy running back equity.
That's an RB2. It's an RB2, legit RB2 at 20.
Legit RB2, not the end of it. So it does make it tough. Another guy that is in kind of a split situation, and we're all moving to the other side. We actually just mentioned him. I was like, we're not going to talk about Jordan Mason at all. Well, we probably are, because we're going to talk about the other guy. Aaron Jones, Terrell, is going to be your third running back you're picking. That's a bust. I think that's a pretty good name. RB 23 on this list. So actually higher than David Montgomery. ECR 64 overall. I'll have to look. How does that work? Oh, yeah, because the ECR positional is higher. But either way, Aaron Jones, what makes him a bust to avoid for you this season?
His coach. His coach told us. He told us what they want to do. He was like, Aaron was great last year. Career highs in attempts, career highs in yards. Like, he had a great year. But we also know Aaron turned 30 in December. In this December, he's going to be 31. You don't want an aging running back carrying the heavy workload that he did, because last year it was the same talk, and it was like, oh, Ty Chandler is going to steal into that workload, and then he absolutely didn't. And so now they bring in Jordan Mason. And it's like, oh, we are so glad to have Aaron. He's really, really good. And we think he fits the scheme personally, that zone rushing scheme that they like to do, that O'Connell likes to do up there. Jordan Mason runs that exact same scheme, and that's why they went and got him. Like, they want this to be a split. They want this to be the Mason and Jones show. So if you're telling me he's not getting career high in attempts again, then we're going back to Packers split time running back by committee, Aaron Jones, and that running back, Aaron Jones. I don't know if in age 31, he's an RB2. I think maybe a flex play, I'm cool with it. RB3, okay. But RB2, like legit RB2, I'm not really there yet. I don't think that's that. I actually think that there's a little bit closer to Mason and Jones stealing into each other's production, and both of them not being as valuable as people want. But Mason's going way lower. So I can't see myself drafting Aaron Jones this year.
Yeah, I'm surprised there hasn't been more movement. Actually, the ADP is lower than the ECR, unless I just might have screwed some of it up in looking. Aaron Jones is 66 overall on the aggregate ADP, and that makes him RB 26. That still seems kind of high, at least for me. Theo, what do you think about this one, Aaron Jones being a bust for this year?
Yeah, I'll say Aaron Jones has been a player that I haven't been drafting. I've liked waiting on Jordan Mason. I do think as the month moves along, Mason's going to move up a little bit. And kind of converge the two. The one out that Aaron Jones has is with the Jordan Addison suspension. He could potentially get off to a fast start because of the pass catching ability. But yeah, if it's a season-long bet for me, it's certainly not one that I want to click the button on. You guys brought up the incredible volume that he had last season. And I'd say just like in drafters' minds right now, everything's sort of gone perfectly with Aaron Jones. We had the heater in the playoffs 2 years ago where he just completely ripped Dallas to shreds, was so good in those two playoff games. And then last year played all 17 games. People are sort of forgetting that he only played 11 games in 2023. Now he's an older back coming off of this incredibly 300 touch season. So yeah, I'm with you guys. Wait on Jordan Mason. Aaron Jones, it feels like I'm paying for last year's stats.
So I kind of mentioned this when I was talking about the draft assistant, which you can hook up to your live drafts and it can help you navigate the waters. I mentioned that you can also use some of this stuff in the simulator. So let's tell you about it. We're talking about these risky running backs. If you want to see what happens when you skip these players, who are the players? These are all the busts. So who do I take? Well, you can go play around with it with the draft simulator today. It lets you do dozens of mock drafts and test different strategies fast. And when we say does, it's like you can do it in an hour. You can get through a bunch different draft positions, different draft spots, and you can see what it looks like when you start avoiding these players if they had happened to maybe be in your queue before. Practice quick and fun, realistic mock drafts based on your league settings in as little as 5 minutes. Sync your league for free and try it today at fantasypros.com/mock or download the Fantasy Football Draft Wizard app, fantasypros.com/mock. Get to mocking. All right. We talked about some of the big names. Those are 6 running backs. And again, I will run through them. We had CMC, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, James Cook, Tony Pollard, Dave Montgomery, and Aaron Jones. Those are running backs that you guys say we've got to avoid because they're going to bust. So how do we avoid drafting RB bust besides the names that you guys just mentioned? Let's talk a little bit of theory. So the general sense of you guys came to determinations of some of these players, but what are some of the characteristics of how to avoid drafting or avoiding running back bust specifically, contrary to what we talked about a little bit before? So Theo, how do you avoid these RB busts in general?
Yeah, I think generally, if we look at the last few years, one good rule we can keep in the back of our heads is this player good, or is it just a situation that's causing you to maybe overdraft a middling talent on the perception that it's a great situation, and therefore this player is going to absorb all this volume that maybe they're not capable of. But I think it's even more simplistic than that. It's when you're drafting, especially this season, when there's so many strong picks, especially early on, it's draft the edge pick. Draft the pick that gives you the best chance of winning your fantasy league, and not just trying to fill out a fantasy football lineup. If a running back is the best possible pick for you, go ahead and click that button, but never take a running back because of you're scared of the scarcity of the position over a wide receiver who can crush their ADP. Last year, we had 3 of the top 15 scorers at the wide receiver position drafted beyond wide receiver 40. Terrell, you talked about it earlier, how there's wide receiver depth, where this year we're going to find those players as well. So I think a lot of times we'll draft these sort of middling type RB2 bets instead, where we should be clicking the button on an edge pick wide receiver. So sort of that's the way to sort of avoid the bust, is don't have that opportunity cost lost because you click the button on a player just because they're a running back and you want to fill out that RB2 spot.
That's a great tip. Terrell, I'm actually going to throw kind of a question to you. And if you have 1 or 2 tips, you're welcome to do it. When I said at the beginning of the show that the bust rate on running backs is just exponentially higher, that's why this episode is more important. You agreed, like you're right now. You're agreeing that that's the case. Because of that, do you think, and this is the goofy thing, but do you think the way to help yourself to avoid bust running backs is pressing into more of a 0 RB strategy and going heavy positionally in other spots? Because if you are have low variance and you're in the 30s and whatever of running backs, it's pretty impossible for them to bust. Now you could bust your team if you do it right, or do it wrong. But I'm going to throw that at you. Do you think maybe one of the best tips in this game to avoiding RB busts is avoiding RB early on?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I there was one point in time where when I was starting off in fantasy, it was RB first and second pick. No doubt, wasn't a question. That's where the fantasy points are coming from. But that's where a lot of the injuries are also coming from too, because those are the guys that are getting 250, 300 carries. They've gotten the workload in years past and they're getting it again. And so those players, injuries happen, lack of production with the offensive line happens, like all of that. And it just kind of looks really, really ugly for a pick you put a lot of stock in. But if you go and you have a fantasy draft and you start some Justin Jefferson, and then you have a T. Higgins, and I think Tyreek Hill is going lower. Like, if you have these trifecta of wide receivers, you feel really, really good about your wide receivers. There's so much value in running back later in the draft from either potential injury that happens, from just a guy that is maybe second in a system that is actually the number 1 in the system, like Bucky Irvin, and the value that he provided people last year. Like, you have a whole bunch of more value that I think later in running backs with guys that people aren't talking about. One of those guys for me this year is RJ Harvey. And I think RJ Harvey isn't getting talked up enough. He's getting talked up, but maybe not enough. He could be a guy that's legitimately running that backfield, and he's going pretty late in the drafts. And so I think that it's a lot of 0 RB, maybe even hero RB, and okay, I trust this one guy, and then okay, let me fill out the rest of my roster. Let me make sure that I have some else, because running back is so volatile. And if you start your draft taking running back in the first 3 rounds, and both of those running backs get hurt, you're effectively tanking your season.
By the way, if not enough people are talking about RJ Harvey, you haven't been on the phone with Debro lately, so just letting you know.
Yeah.
I kind of positioned the question to you. Did you have any other tip to avoiding RBs, or do we?
And that's really
hit that you're
it. Like,
comfortable
just
with? Okay.
stick to your guns. Stick to your guns. And if you say, hey, I just don't believe in this player, like, don't reach in for a guy that you don't believe in just because you feel like you're short on running back, because you never know. Like, you may get the 6th round, 7th round darling that's going out there, and like Jordan Mason last year, Chris CMC's out, and now you're getting all this work. So if I'm right about Saquon Barkley, Will Shipley is more interesting in drafts here. So if you take a Will Shipley and he ends up being a starter, that's a whole nother player that's now in your starting rotation that you weren't even planning on. So yeah, just go stick to your guns and just plan in advance what you're drafting in the back end of rounds to make sure that you have something solid and a good game plan instead of just relying on a top or top 2 running back in the league.
And at the end of the day, if you don't just want to trust your boys, you want to trust us here and all the work that we do and what we write for you. And another way to avoid it would be you can, go heavy into doing your research. And one of the most invaluable places I think to do that is with Fantasy Points. Theo, I told you off air or before we started, I'm like, I love Fantasy Points. What do you guys got going on over there right now that you want to tell everybody about? You got some pods. It's a great site if you want to get like really granular. So let's talk about Fantasy Points for a second.
Yeah, so for me, this time of year, Fantasy Football Daily, dropping 3 episodes a week. It goes to 4 in season. You can subscribe to that anywhere you get your pods or on Fantasy Points YouTube. I'm also recording School of Scott with Scott Barrett and I. We do that about once a week. Debro's been on that show with us recently. And that show we sometimes do twice a week, but really once a week. And that'll continue in season. And then all of my Dynasty content goes on Dynasty Life. You can find that again anywhere you get your pods, doing about a show a week there. Fantasy Points YouTube, if you're watching this on Fantasy Pros YouTube, go ahead and give us a follow as well. We've really grown in that YouTube channel. And then I'm dropping my top 100 rankings update. That should come out sometime this week. And we're doing a number of articles that can really, really help you win. So check out all my written work and my rankings over at fantasypoints.com.
All right, this is it. This is the final one. This is the big zero exposure. We threw some caveats at you like, I don't like the ADP and da-da-da. Like, but maybe there's no maybes here. This is your not going to do it. No, thanks. I want 0 exposure of this player, even with a discount this season. And Theo, let's hear it. This player will not be on any of your teams. There's no caveats. Who is it?
Yeah, so we're starting to see in individual drafts where Joe Mixon is falling like a rock. It gets to be to a point where you're like, maybe I should click the button on Joe Mixon. Look what he did last year. But this is a player that I'm going to get out from this year. I don't really want any exposure to. It feels like we're paying for last year's numbers. This year, they drafted Woody Marks in round 4. They signed Nick Chubb, who has a little bit of positivity despite his own injury history from last year. And now we're dealing with all these injuries with Joe Mixon where we don't have a whole lot of clarity as to when he will be back on the field. We also have a coordinator change where all of these offseason moves indicate to me that the Texans want to do what they can to improve the passing game with CJ Stroud. Draft the 2 wide receivers on day 2, trade for Christian Kirk, and again, draft Woody Marks, who had more catches than any back in this entire draft class. So I am full-on fading Joe Mixon. I'm trying to mix in some very late Woody Marks. I think Joe Mixon is a player that I'm uncomfortable drafting right now. I don't think he's much of an edge. He's a regression candidate, and now we're dealing with a lot of factors I want no part of this late in the offseason.
Terrell, you get your own soapbox. It's your time up. We're not even going back and forth. Joe Mixon for Theo. Terrell, 0 exposure. You don't care what the reason is. Who is this guy for you? The ultimate fade at the RB bust territory.
Yeah, he's too high at this point. CMC, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. No way. There are drafts where CMC is going 3 spots ahead of Malik Neighbors. There is no point in time, no matter what the possible, because I understand, and I do believe it. You give me 17 games of CMC, he's probably going to be RB run. That's where I have it at. But I'm going to tell you right now, Malik Neighbors, potential offensive player of the year type player. Like there's no way that I'm ever drafting CMC with his injury history over what could be a Malik Neighbors this season. So with that alone, with that one player, he's a bust for me. I can't do it. I'm not going to have any CMC. I would like to, because again, 17 games, he's probably going to win you your league. But I just can't trust it too much, and there's too many other players that I like going around there.
Yeah, we don't all agree. But it's okay. He's the bust to fade. Joe Mixon, Christian McCaffrey, those are the zero exposure guys. And one more time, CMC was actually to the top for Theo too. So both of you just hating. God, Saquon Barkley, James Cook, Tony Pollard, Dave Montgomery, Aaron Jones. What makes a bust to you guys that are watching and listening? Yeah, well, drop it in the chat. Which of these busts did you agree with the most? Who's the RB that you think is the biggest bust of this season? And guess what? The top guys are absolutely more susceptible because the bust rate is so much higher. Drop it in the comments below. And when you do so, you're automatically entering yourself in to win that AJ Brown helmet as long as you are subscribed to the channel. So make sure you do that. Theo, thank you so much, my friend. Love having you on. Terrell, great seeing you again. I'm Chris Welsh. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Be careful with all those RBs to bust. We know where we need to avoid. We'll talk to you next time right here on Fantasy Pros. Bye, friends.